In a small, dusty village where books were rare and school was far, lived a boy named Arif, whose heart burned with the desire to learn, though he owned not a single textbook. His father worked as a day laborer, earning just enough to put food on the table, but Arif's eyes always searched for paper, old magazines, or anything with printed letters. While other kids played cricket under the sun, Arif sat near the closed library's gate, watching students walk by with bags full of books he could only dream of reading. One rainy evening, he found a torn math book beside a trash pile, soaked and damaged, but to him, it was a treasure, a window into a world beyond his village. Arif dried the pages under the lamp in their hut, and each number he read, he copied again and again, turning memorization into an obsession that chased away his hunger. The village teacher noticed the boy's dedication and gifted him an old English dictionary, saying, "You may not understand it now, but one day, this book will unlock your future." Arif didn't know most of the words, but he carried that dictionary everywhere like a holy book, learning a new word daily and using it in made-up sentences as he walked. Every morning before sunrise, he'd study under a streetlight for 2 hours, because there was no electricity at home, and he believed dreams couldn't wait for the perfect time. His neighbors called him mad, some laughed at his scribbled notebooks, but Arif kept studying, whispering lines to himself like spells, hoping they would one day transform his life. When a state scholarship test was announced, Arif borrowed a pen, walked 10 kilometers barefoot to the nearest center, and sat among hundreds of confident, city-educated students. He had never seen such large buildings or printed sheets with so many tricky questions, but he wasn't afraid. He knew what struggle felt like, and this was different. After submitting the paper, he returned home quietly, unsure of the result but proud that he didn't let fear keep him from trying, something many never dared to do. Days passed with no news, and Arif continued studying whatever he could find, old exam papers, borrowed guides, chalkboard lessons left behind at the village school. Then one afternoon, the village postman arrived, waving a blue envelope the scholarship committee had written back, and Arif's hands shook as he opened the letter with trembling fingers. "Congratulations," it began, "you have secured the top rank in the region," and suddenly, the world around him blurred, not from confusion, but from the tears he refused to blink away. He was offered a place at a prestigious city school with a full scholarship, uniform, meals, and a hostel. For Arif, it felt like a rocket to another planet. The first time he entered a real classroom with whiteboards, computers, and disciplined students, Arif felt out of place, but he never let shame overpower his desire to grow. His city classmates laughed at his accent and torn dictionary, but he smiled silently because he knew he was learning, and his purpose was larger than their jokes. Every night, when the others slept, Arif stayed up revising, repeating formulas and passages until they became as natural to him as breathing. Sleep was a luxury he postponed. In 1 year, his teachers took notice. The village boy with no prior training was now leading in math and English, not by talent, but by unstoppable consistency. He became a symbol of grit, and students who once teased him began asking him for notes, for help, and slowly, respect replaced mockery as he rose through the ranks. At 16, Arif stood on stage to receive the National Merit Award, and as he held the golden trophy, flashbacks of studying under streetlights flooded his mind like a dream. Reporters asked, "What inspired you to work this hard?" And he simply replied, "Hunger, not for food, but for knowledge, and I was never full." His story spread like wildfire. Schools invited him for speeches, and students clapped for him, the boy who built a future from trash and willpower alone. With his scholarship, he entered university, studying engineering, using the same dictionary from years ago, now tattered but still filled with scribbled notes and circled words. Professors were amazed by his discipline, And when they asked about his secret, he said, "Every line I study today brings me one step closer to changing my village." Arif didn't chase luxury. He sent money back home, built a library in his village with donated books, and hired two teachers to help children dream as he once did. On the wall of that library, he placed a framed photo of his torn math book and wrote below, "This was my beginning, never underestimate your start." Years later, Arif became a well-known innovator, designing affordable solar lights for rural students, ensuring no one had to study under dim, flickering street lamps like he once did. He was invited by the government to design education tools for remote schools, and his inventions reached thousands of kids who had only known darkness before. Despite all his success, Arif never left behind the village that raised him, believing his true graduation wasn't from a university, but from hopelessness. One morning, a boy approached him at the library, saying, "Sir, I want to study like you did, but we're poor, and I'm not smart." Arif bent down, smiled, and placed his old dictionary in the boy's hands, whispering, "Neither was I, but books don't ask if you're rich or smart, they just open." That moment reminded Arif of his past, of the boy he once was, and he knew then that success wasn't measured in degrees, but in how many you lift with you. Students from across the country now wrote letters to him, sharing their struggles, and he responded to each one personally, knowing that words can change lives as surely as actions can. He became more than an engineer. He became a movement, a story that told people their starting point didn't define their finish line. In his autobiography, titled Chalk Dust and Dreams, he wrote, "Education isn't about schools. It's about how far your mind is willing to run even if your feet are bare." Arif's life was proof that even in the most forgotten corners of the world, brilliance can be born, not from privilege, but from persistence and belief. He taught millions that books are more powerful than any weapon, and that no matter how poor you are, if you have the hunger to learn, nothing is impossible. And so, the boy who once studied beside garbage piles became the man who lit the minds of thousands, all because he never gave up on one sentence at a time.